Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Grace.
I hope you are fine.
Yes, I am. And you?
I'm good.
And yes. Well, to start with, we would like to know a little bit about um, yourself, though your name is on it, and you're welcome to Practitioners Forum series of the Business School. And your name, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like we know you are from the GIMPA Business School. Any other designation that you have or things that you do, like your HR training and those things, you can share with us, and then we know what to do. And what do you teach at GIMPA? And those briefly before we start the presentation.
Okay. So as you can see on the screen, my name is Grace Abanampia. I'm a human resource management lecturer at the business school. I think I've been with GIMPA for the past 6 years. I was an adjunct for a year, and then I became a full-time. So in the past, I've done a couple of courses. I've taught a couple of courses. So I started with organizational behavior and management, and then I move on to training and development. I do recruitment, staffing as well. And currently this semester, I'm doing compensation and benefits management. So at the business school, I'm part of the research committee. So we organized a business school research series. Now, just a bit about me. Apart from prior to working at GIMPA, I was an assistant HR training consultant. So basically, I work with HR perspective. What we did was to organize training seminars for some organizations in Ghana, EPA, Total Ghana, and all that. And apart from that, I also have my own consultancy, GAM HR, which we train especially the youth. I'm passionate about the youth, so more often doing some training for the youth as well. So this is just a bit about Grace Abanampia. Okay. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Yosin for this opportunity. I don't take it lightly. And then for the practitioners forum organizers for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We see this, we are talking about the current recruitment processes and procedures of organizations with emphasis on resumes and those things. Yes, today we just want to hear from you, so you can go ahead and give us the presentation as we all follow.
Okay. So I would say, I think it's still morning. So good morning to you all. And once again, I would say thank you to the organizers, to Practitioners Forum. So this morning, my presentation, just as Dr. Yosin said, I'm going to share my thoughts on current recruitment processes and procedures of organization with emphasis on resumes, interviews, and social media presence. And as I think that the theme for the Practitioners Forum for this semester is talking about getting ready for the world. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
So basically, my presentation is to help students to know how to prepare, especially those in the final years. When you get out of the four corners of GIMPA, what are you supposed to do? How do you even get your dream job? And what are some of the procedures and processes that organizations use in terms of resumes, in terms of interviews, aptitude tests, and then social media presence? So I'll just give a learning outcome of my presentation. So at the end of this presentation, students will be able to understand the current recruitment processes and then procedures of organizations. Specifically, they will recognize the relevance of the design of a sound. I call it sound, but I mean a good resume or CV for their job applications. And then secondly, they will gain knowledge of the search tools for attracting job applicants, specifically what employers actually use in terms of attracting applicants. And I will focus my discussion on the social media presence, which has become one of the search tools that most organizations in this current era use to attract the best fit candidates for their jobs. And then my final presentation would help students to also know how to prepare for interviews and then aptitude tests. So basically, this is a summary of my presentation. I'll move ahead to go to start the first part of my presentation, looking at what a CV is. I'm sure most of us have heard about it, and others would also call it resumes. So whether it's a CV or whether it's resumes, we are all talking about the same thing. So curriculum vitae is a very in-depth document that describes one's career journey step by step. Okay. So it's actually, when you pick a CV, it tells you about an individual, what the person have done over the years in terms of work experience, in terms of educational. So I'm going to talk about, even before I move on to talk about the components, I just want to highlight on types of CVs. So I'll talk about the chronological CV, which highlights on job titles and work experience. So that is one example of CV. So in development, you could use the chronological CV approach, or you could also use the skills-based CV approach. And that basically focuses on one's transferable skills. Now, the question is, what are transferable skills? These are abilities that one has obtained in a given situation that can employ these skills in many scenarios. Okay, so on campus, you might probably have not worked for a while, so you might not have all the job titles and work experience. So you will want to focus more on the skills-based CV that highlights on your transferable skills, because on campus, there are a lot of skills that students have, but sometimes they actually underestimate themselves, especially the group presentations that you do on campus, the research works and all that. All of these actually help you to develop some skills that can help you to develop a very good CV to help you land on the job that you want to get in future. Now, I would say here that if you have limited work history in the position or the field you are applying for, then I would recommend that the most appropriate CV that as students, as you are getting prepared for the world, you could use is the skills-based CV type, where you highlight on some of the transferable skills like team building skills, leadership skills, and so forth. So these are the two types of CVs that I want to move ahead to talk about what you include in your CV. And what I want to share here is that the CV is about yourself. So anytime a recruiter or an employer picks your CV, they should be eager to see you in the interview or to work with them. So what do you put on your CV so that it will help you to be called for interview? Now, one of the elements or the components of a CV is your contact information. So you should have your full name, your address, your phone number, and then your email address. Even some people go ahead to put some of the social media handles that they are on. So specifically the LinkedIn, which is more professional, you could put on your CV. Now, having talked about the contact information, personal profile is very key. Now, what is personal profile? So it also focuses on a brief overview of your notable achievements or skills or experience that make you a unique candidate for the job. So on your CV, you should highlight on your personal profile. Now, normally when you pick up some CVs, you realize that the personal profile, people write a lot of information there. That is not good enough. I would treat you that as student, make sure that you make it brief, because that would actually help the recruiter to decide as to whether to hire you or not. So if you have like two or let's say maximum of 3 sentences is good. So I can give like 2 examples that I have here. So one that is actually applying for a client delivery expert, and then I have one for an human resource graduate. So examples of personal profile. So the first one I have is a dedicated client delivery expert, dedicated to recognizing the customer and stakeholder needs and offering meaningful solutions to all issues. I think this summarizes a client delivery expert. So it tells you that you're able to recognize customers and then stakeholders' needs, and then you are able to even go further to apply meaningful solutions to it. And any employer that sees this at least will be eager to see. Another example I will give, someone, maybe if you're on campus and you are doing a course in HR, an example that you could use as your personal profile, you could just put a human resource management graduate seeking to work in any reputable organization that offers challenges and opportunities that would actually result into personal and career development. I'm sure that every organization is looking for someone who is not only looking out for opportunities that the organization gives to them, but is also looking to addressing challenges in the organization. I'm sure if you have this one, the organization will be eager to also call you for interviews. Now, still on the components of CVs, you also have to write your employment or professional information on the CV. So you should have the title of the most recent position, the start date, and then the end date. But if you are still working, then you don't put the end date, you could just put the start date, and then you could put current so that we know that you are still on the job. Don't forget to add the name of the organization or the employer that you are working for. You also have to provide brief description of the job duties that you actually do for that particular, and make sure that in describing these job duties, you use short phrases that are clear and concise. Another thing you can put on your CV is the educational information. So on campus, you have a degree that you are doing. If you are doing Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences, you put it there. Now, having put the degree title there, you go further to talk about some major or minor courses that you are doing on campus. So for instance, if you are doing Bachelor of Arts in, let's say, Human Resource Management, you might have done some major courses that is related to HR. So you might have done training and development, compensation and management. Make sure that you list some of these courses that so that at least, although the employer might know the main degree that you are doing, they could also know other major courses that you've done as well as minor courses. Don't forget to add the name of the school and then the date of attendance. So when you started and then when you completed your course. Now, aside your educational information, if on campus you've done some short courses or workshops, I'm sure Practitioners Forum, you could put it on your CV because it is where you learn about other practitioners' experiences, and you could even put it on your CV. I'm sure in the past, Gimpa was doing career and development workshop. If you have, if in future Gimpa is able to do that, you could also add. But apart from the things that you do on campus, I'm sure off campus you've also done some workshops. You could also add to your CV. You can add your awards or certificates that you've also acquired within the period. And then hobbies is very important. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So you add your hobbies as well. If you like singing, if you like reading, you could just put it on it. So this is about the component of a CV. I just want to show a sample so that based on what I've said, you actually know how it looks like, especially the formatting and all that. Doc, please, can you see the sample?
Yeah, so you can see the sample. Yes.
Okay. So this is a sample of a CV. What we are saying is that your CV, as I said in the beginning, should be attractive. Okay. So if you've not learned the Microsoft Office really well, especially Word, you have to make sure that you learn it well so that your font size, your font styles is all in shape. So if you look at it, we have the person's name there, which I talked about, the person's personal data, that is the personal, the contact information that I talked there. You have the address, the cell number or the phone number, we have the email address, and the profile, personal profile that I talked about. Some people might decide to list their major competencies and strengths even before the educational qualification. So based on what you detailed in your CV, you could just highlight on the major competencies. So you can see all those, the person have stated excellent communication, work independently, and then observable skills. These skills that are stated here are explained within the CV. And so you can see the education and then qualifications. I talked about the start date and then the end date. These are all there. And then just as I said, if it's Bachelor of Art or Bachelor of Science, this one is Bachelor of Science in Digital Audio Arts. And then the person has gone further to list some of the courses that he did under this particular course. So you can see audio production, we have music theory, sociology, and advanced audio production, so that the employer knows exactly what you did on campus. And that would help them to determine whether you are fit for the job. Now, I talked about the work history. So that is there. You have the start date and the end date. So the person has highlighted the key responsibilities and achievements. And you can see the job title there, that is production worker. And then the name of the organization is also there. Now, I will say here that apart from for this particular CV, I'm sure the person didn't highlight what we call it, the workshops and all that, but you can add to it. Now, the reference is also important as part of the CV. So you can get two people that can give reference in terms of what they know about you, because apparently when you get the job, the employer would have to do like their background search. Okay, so they will ask you to give maybe one or two people that they can call to find out some of the things you've done on the job. So here we have two references there, and the employer can contact these people to find out about what Ekubia is capable of doing for that particular organ. So this is just about the CV. So you see that some of the things that I want to note here, that things like grammatical errors are not very good that we actually do when designing our CV. So make sure that you omit grammatical errors, make sure that you use action verbs. So things like overseas, ensures, designed, reports, reported, and all that, those kind of things. These are very action verbs that you could use on your CV. So I'll move on to the next part of my presentation, looking at the fact that now you have all your CV in shape, you have a good CV, you've applied for it. The next thing is that when your CV is good, the employer calls you for the interview. Now, I keep saying that in this world that we find ourselves, there's a lot of competition out there. So if an employer identifies one vacancy, you have about 100 or more applications. The question is, what will set you apart from the rest? So if the employer actually defines maybe looking for an HR, human resource officer, which is an entry-level position. Now, if you have about more than 100 people applying, what will actually set you apart from the rest? So we are going to look at interviews. Okay, when you call for interviews, what are the things that you have to do? You need to prepare. So I'm going to look at some of the different types of interviews that employers use, the types of questions, and how you can approach those questions. But before I go ahead to talk about interviews, there's this quote that I saw, which I thought I could share. It talks about the fact that interviews are like first dates. Good impressions count, awkwardness can occur, outcomes are unpredictable. So just as we put in more effort when we have first dates, job interviews are same. You have to make sure that you prepare really, really well so that you actually make a very good impressions. Now, I want to talk about the fact that having gone through this session, you'll be able to handle interviews even more confidently, and you may even be excited to look forward to it anytime that you are called for interview. So let's look at some of the codes. So I asked some employers to find out some of the things that they identify when graduates, especially the entry-level graduates, actually portray when they get into the interview. So these are some of the things that they talked about. So one of the issues is that applicants always sometimes create poor first impression. The question is, how do you create a very good impression? Okay, one of the things is that sometimes candidates don't even show up on time. Okay, now time has become what? A resource. It has always been a resource. So if you are called for interview, at least be there 15 minutes before time. It is not after the interview time that, and that actually, if you are not able to be there on time, then definitely it is not a very good first impression. And the fact that you need to be nice to the reception, okay? One of the things that if you want to create good impression, you get to the organization and you make sure that you are nice. You don't even become nice to the people that are going to interview you. So from the reception or the security man, make sure that you put up the very good behavior that you ought to do. Now, another thing is that applicants are shy. That is another thing that employers talk about. That when they get to the interview room, they are shy. How do you even overcome your shyness when you get to the interview? One of the things is that if you don't practice,
presentation.
Pardon?
Can you get a presentation? We are only seeing the CV. Can you look at the
oh, okay. So
yeah.
let me share. I think afterwards
Yeah.
I didn't share it. Sorry. I'll share that. Please, can you see it now?
Yes, we can see everything.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm talking about some employers' codes in terms of the things that they see. So I've talked about the fact that sometimes candidates show poor first impression. I've talked about some of the things that shows that you're not actually giving a very good impression. The other thing is the applicants are shy. Okay, I'm sure by the time you leave the four corners of GIMPA, you should have overcome your shyness because you go to presentations and other stuff. You've worked in groups. So the only thing is that you prepare. When you prepare really well, at least you build on your confidence even before you get into the interview room. And another thing that employers talk about, applicants lack enthusiasm. Okay, so you want the job. When you get to the interview, let them know that you have interest in the job. And even not only about the job, but also about the company that you want to work for. So sometimes when we are called for interview, what we do is that it is only about our CV, the things that we've done. But we need to go further to research into even the job that you are applying for, and also find information about the job and the company that you are applying. So you don't even know about the mission and vision of the company that you are applying to. All these things would have to be done prior to the day of interview. And then I've talked about the fact that people don't even show interest about the job or the company. So these are a few quotes from some employers in terms of the things that they identify when job applicants come to the interview room. Now, why do I want to talk about why interviews are very, very important. It's important because it is where the employer and the employees try to get to know about each other. So it's a time where the employer gets to know the competencies in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitude of the person, the job applicant that they are yet to employ. And then it's also a time that the employer would also share about the organizational culture, okay? So as to sometimes some organizations are, if you see the slide I have, some might have outward, what do you call it? Outward oriented, aggressive, stable, team-oriented people. These are, I mean, some corporate culture for organizations. So before you go there, you should research into that particular organization, get to know about their culture, and then see whether you will be able to fit into that particular organizational culture. It is very, very key. And it's also a time to also assess people's motivational level, okay? To know whether you have you are one that can generate new ideas, you are one that can generate new goals, and so forth. Now I'm going to talk about different interviews that organizations use, okay? So you can see there we have the face-to-face interview, okay, so one-on-one, where you have the interviewer and an interviewee. It's more of a conversation. Interviews, sometimes when we are called for interview, we get scared. No, it is not about a time to get scared. It is just a conversation for the interviewer and interview to get to know about each other. Then we could also have what we call the interview, telephone interview. So that one, some organization, what they do is that before you even come for the face-to-face interview, they call you and then they do an interview on phone just to find out the things that they want to find out before they call you for face-to-face interview. You could also have video interviews and then the panel interview. So instead of one-on-one, you might have more than one people on a panel, and these people will ask you questions. They can also do Skype interview. Now, whichever one that the organization use, I would stress here that as students, you need to prepare for it. So for instance, if it's a telephone interview, you don't want to find yourself in an environment where there's a lot of noise. You need to be in a place that there's a lot of quietness, so that you'll be able to get the questions that you are being asked and address them accordingly. Now I'll move on to talk about types of questions that employers ask, okay? So employers ask technical questions, motivational questions, general questions, competency-based questions, strength-based questions. Now, all of these, before you go to the interview, you should have prepared ahead of time. Write your questions, try to come up with answers to your questions and prepare before you go. So technical questions, what are they? These are questions that are actually used to assess candidate technical knowledge in the field of study. So for instance, if on campus you are doing accounting, what you are doing now is acquiring technical knowledge in that field. And so you should be able to get technical knowledge that would actually help you to demonstrate that in the interview room. So they will ask you questions based on a position that you are applying for. So in your field of study, if it's about HR, you should know some of the things in HR training, how do we select people for training and so forth. Now, motivational questions is also very important. The reason is that they assess what candidates are enthusiastic about and then what drives their success. And so some of the questions that you might be asked are, why are you interested in this particular position? Now you should be willing to actually tell the interviewer why this particular position, what sets you apart from the others that are also applying for it. And then they could also ask you about what interests you about our organization. I think before I talked about the fact that you need to also research into the organization you are applying for. So most of the organization have information on their website. So if you get there and get information about the mission, vision, their goals, and all that, it will actually make you to know exactly what interests you about that particular organization. And when you are asked about it, you'll be able to talk about it. And then not just about the organization, they would also ask you what interests you about the job you are applying for or the career. So these questions are very key. Don't forget, you'll be asked technical questions, motivational questions. Another question that they could ask about, they are strength-based questions. So they will assess what you can do and what you enjoy doing. So most of the times, if you get to the interview, sometimes they will ask you about your strength and then what your weaknesses. Now, sometimes when they ask about weaknesses, you don't have to talk about something that you think will affect the role that you're applying for. So some weaknesses that in the past I have talked about, the fact that I'm a perfectionist. I always want perfect things. Now, over the years, if I, for instance, if I don't get maybe 100 and whilst I was growing up, sometimes I get discouraged. But I've come to realize that, I mean, perfectionist is not only about getting 100%, but whatever grade that I get, I try to constantly improve on that. So that can be a weakness for myself. So you need to think through what your weaknesses are so that you don't go and say something that would actually affect the job that you are seeking for. So these are some trend questions that I have here. So what do you find easiest to learn at school? What are you good at? We can also ask you, do you like to work independently or in groups? I'm sure by now you should know whether you can work independently, because on campus you do things individually and then you also work in groups. So you should be able to come up with some situations where you work independently as well as in groups, so that they will know how you can work both independently and then as well as in groups. Now, competency-based questions is also is very important. I think currently that most organizations use the competency-based questions. Now, it's actually focusing on assessing a job applicant's past behaviors. And then based on that, you could actually determine whether the person will be able to do the job. So these are examples of some competency-based questions. So in the interview room, they could ask you a question as, tell me a time that when you work under pressure, okay? Give an example when you handled a conflict at the workplace. And then what has been your great achievement? These are all competency-based questions. In a minute, we'll learn about how you can approach these questions. I'll give few examples. So in actually talking about or answering competency-based questions, you use the STAR approach, okay? So if you see there on the slide, I have the different meanings for the different words. So the S stands for situation, the T stands for task, A stands for actions, and then the R stands for what? Results. So if you are asked, tell me a time that you worked in a team, be ready not to just talk about the fact that, yes, I'm a team builder. Yes, we know you're a team builder. But using the STAR approach, you should be able to tell us a situation or describe a context where you actually develop this particular what? Team building skills. So you talk about where you work, if, I mean, it's a work environment where you actually develop this skills, you should talk about it, and then what tasks were involved, be able to provide detailed information on your responsibilities as well as your duties, and then what actions you took. Okay, in working in a group, what are some of the things that you did? Maybe you were a timekeeper that actually helped the group to achieve a task within the time, and then the results. If the results came out good, you should be able to talk about it, and vice versa. If it was not good, don't feel shy to share it, but as you share it, tell us how you were able to overcome the negative result or outcome. Now, these are some competencies that I put down so that prior to your interviews, you could put down some questions on some of the skills that you've developed on campus. Okay, so it's, if you're a team builder, what actually did you do on campus that helped you to develop that skills? Decision-making skills, leadership skills, detail orientation, customer service skills, problem-solving skills, as well as openness to change. So before you go to the interview room, you have idea using the STAR approach, the situation, the tasks involved, the actions you took, as well as the outcome, which is the result. So I'm done talking about how to prepare for interviews, the types of questions that are being asked, and how you can approach those questions. Now, I'm going also to talk about aptitude test. Now, what is an aptitude test? From the definition I have, there is just a test that is used to determine how well a job applicant is prepared for the job, as well as how the person can actually succeed on the job. Now, these are, if you want to pass the aptitude test, which, I mean, most organizations use. Okay, so the banks use it a lot. Okay, so depending, I would say here that depending on the job that you're applying for, they might use these different tests to find out whether you are competent for the job or not. So they will test your numerical reasoning. Okay, so how you actually grasp numerical concepts. Okay, it's very key. They also test your math reasoning test. Okay, some of us, I'm sure most students don't like math. But if you are someone who is wanting to work in the bank, for sure you work with figures. So at least you should know about some basic mathematical functions, percentage ratios, and all that. You should know it. Some of the aptitude tests might also test your diagramming reasoning. Okay, so you might have multiple choice questions based on visual representation. So they give you shapes, patterns, and then figures. You should be able to make meaning out of those things. Now, some might also look at situational judgment test. So how you actually approach situations as they come on the job. So they will test that one as well. Now, if you want to develop or to prepare for aptitude tests, there are a lot of information that you can get on the link on the internet. However, I found one. I mean, a lot of these recruitment agencies all around have a lot of questions in terms of aptitude tests. But there's this recruitment agency that is crossover. Okay, if you want to sign up for it, when you sign up for it, you will be able to look at some of their interview questions, some of the aptitude tests. And so anytime that you leave campus and you have opportunity to undertake aptitude tests, you could use the crossover website to help you prepare. Apart from the crossover, I mean, there are lots, there's www.aptitude-test.com. You could also go there and make preparations. Now, the next thing that I would also look at is social media presence. Okay. I'm sure by now a lot of us on the social media, and it will surprise you that currently most employers are also adopting that as a search tool in attracting best fit candidates for their organizations. Now, it is important that just as employers are branding themselves using social media as graduates or as potential graduates, as we are leaving, getting ready for the world, we also have to brand ourselves using these social medias. And so we've got lots of them. I'm sure some of you are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I can go on and on. But the question is, are we using it to actually help us get the dream job that we wish to get? It's very, very important. So if you've not actually signed up for some of these social media handles, then you have to do it. Specifically, I think LinkedIn is very, very good in case you are looking for a job. Now, what I want to say is that although social media might help you to actually get your dream job, it depends on what you put there. Now, if you have created any account, make sure that you work on designing on your profile on these social media handles. So for LinkedIn, it gives you opportunity to talk about your educational background, your skills and all that. So you design it very well because even before you go for interviews, I want you to know that the employers go in there to look for some information. So it is not only about you being there, doing anything at all, because if you just put negative things on your social media, employers are going to find you out. So make sure that in terms of photos, in terms of things that you write on social media, you are really particular about it, because even it will interest you to know that even during your probationary period, employers are still following you on the social media before they even employ you as a full-time worker. Now, I was just looking at some surveys that Career Life have actually conducted. So it talks about the importance of social media presence. So the fact that 48% of candidates believe that social media presence is very important for potential employers, and 35% of employers evaluate candidates' social media profiles. I just talked about it. So it means that you're looking for a job, make sure that you actually create a profile that is very attractive, and be cautious of the things that you put there. Because if you put the wrong things there, it might actually not help you to get the jobs that you really want. Now, I think I've talked about the usefulness of social media, the fact that it will help you to get your dream job. That is, if you're able to brand yourself well, okay, so be able to keep information about your employment history, location, professional skills, and then try to also engage with several employers, because as I said, employers are also on the social media. So if you actually come across any job application, make sure that you go online to search for that employer and then try to engage with them. You get more information about them, and then you can decide as to whether you want to work with them or not. And as I said, be mindful of the things that you put on the social media, because it might also affect you. So thank you very much. I'll just give a summary of what I've talked about. CV is very important because it helps you, or it helps the employer to invite you for interviews. And then secondly, we have talked about different components. Make sure that your CV is very attractive, your personal profile should be on point, educational background, your employment history. Don't forget to put your awards and certificates on it. If you have hobbies, try and do that as well. Now, I went on to talk about interviews. That interviews, if you're able to get your CV on point, that is when the employer will call you for interview. Now, anytime you are called for interview, be excited, but know that there's more work to be done. Make sure that you prepare the different types of questions that I talked about: motivational questions, technical questions, strength-based questions, and then make sure that you've prepared sample answers to the questions that you come up with. Don't forget to use the STAR approach in answering these questions in the interview room. I've also talked about the fact that employers use the aptitude test to actually decide whether a person is best fit for the job. So there are a lot of information about aptitude tests. There are a lot of recruitment agencies around that you could actually sign up with, so that you can learn about the different samples of the test. And then don't forget, social media presence has also become a search tool that most employers also use to attract the best fit candidate for the job. Make sure that you sign up on either one or two of these social media handles and design your profiles really on point. And that will help you to engage with different employers. And doing that will help you to get the dream job. However, don't forget, I said, make sure or be mindful of the things that you put on your social media, because it can also influence the decisions that employers make with regard to your job application. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, what do I have to do on the day or the night before an interview? Do I have to do what do you suggest? How do I prepare? Do I have to sleep on time? What do I have to do to be able to be in top shape to be able to get myself?
So I will share my experience over the years, what I've done anytime I was called for interviews. So I would suggest that anytime you have interview, make sure that you prepare ahead of time. You don't wait till the last minute. So for me, I'm someone that like planning a lot, Okay, so I don't do my things the last minute, because if I do that over the years, it has not helped me. So I plan a lot. So you don't wait till like a day before, a night before to prepare, because in that case, you get stressed. And when you get stressed, it will actually show up when you get to the interview. So I would suggest that if you have an interview, make sure that you prepare ahead of time, sleep early. And then I also entreat that make sure that you get your, I think dress, appearances are also very important. Okay, so be well dressed. Okay, because when you dress well, your confidence level is also pushed up there, and you can also do very well. So, and then I also advise that if you have to take in something before the interview, it helps. Okay, so if you have to take in like a tea or something, it helps. It also helps to bring your nervousness down a bit. If you don't have anything in your stomach, it's not too good, because you don't even know what time it's going to take you for the interview, because there are other people there. So I don't advise that student to wait till the last minute to prepare, because when you do that, it will affect you in the interview.
Yes, okay. Because your energy levels will go down.
Yes, will
And
go
the
down.
way you speak, everything becomes drowsy.
It will affect you. You will show
You can,
the day
yes.
of the interview.
They can't
Yes.
even hear you speak up and all that energy,
Yes.
with energy levels going down. Okay, good. Also, when it comes to like preparing for an aptitude test, if you are told that aptitude test, let's say there may be an aptitude test or something, how long do I have to practice some of these things? A
I
week,
think
2
that when
weeks?
it comes to, oh, sorry. Okay, so when it comes to the aptitude test, I mean, it's individual differences. You should know your strength, yes.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying, even whilst on campus, you can start doing your first year. Try practicing this. You don't wait till you finish school. Okay, so that's why I said there are lots of information on the net. Try to sign up on that and then start. So if you are someone that you think that, I mean, I wouldn't say even only those that are applying for bank jobs, but any other jobs that you apply, because you don't know the mode that that particular employer is going to use. So start from the very first year, so you don't wait till you complete school. Because when you complete school, the time is too short for you to do the preparation. But when it comes to as to how long to prepare, it's individual different, because some people, it takes a longer time for them, because it's about different aspects, different reasons, numerical, situational judgments, diagramming reasoning. It's a lot. So I would advise that if you can, as a student, you can start from first year, second year. So by the time you leave school, at least you have more understanding about the format of the aptitude test, and I'm sure it will help you to excel when you get the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question, which is a big question for all of us, you see, most of the time, as someone who has just finished school, yes, what do I have to put on my CV? Because I may not have a lot to see, and you go and see some people's CVs, and yes,
Yeah.
what do I have to put? How do I manage that? Negotiate that spend? Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think yesterday I was talking to one of my students who is just doing the national service. Okay, so what I tell my students whilst teaching them on campus is they should have a reflective diary, okay, which I introduced to them. So as we go through the semester, you try to reflect on the skills that you've developed. And that will be in that reflective diary. So if it's about team building skills, we do group presentation. So you try to highlight on the things that you did within the group. So for my class, what I do is that when I put them in groups, I try to tell them that have people get different roles played in the group. So you would have the timekeeper, you have the secretary that would jot down. The timekeeper would actually help them to work within the time. You have the team leader, and then the team leader would actually control the team, because you know that some people are outspoken, and so if you don't realize, they will actually take over the discussion, and then the quiet ones will not. So as they go through this, whatever role you played in that group that helped to achieve that particular task that I assigned to them, I ask you to write it down, because I tell students that on campus, you might not have the opportunity to work get the practical experience in terms of work. However, I talked about transferable skills. These are skills that students can use. Okay, so instead of listing your job title and work experience, you could develop a transferable and skill-based CV where you talk about these transferable skills, that the team skills that you built on campus, leadership skills, and so forth. Okay, so definitely, if they're able to reflect on these experiences, they should get at least 2 pages of a CV that they can use to apply for the job.
Okay. Thank you. So what do you have for our students, GIMPA Business School? Any advice for us?
Yeah, so I think the
level
advice—
400 students.
Level 400 students, yes. So all that I'm telling them is that after school, I wouldn't say is all rosy. Okay, the challenges will come, but I'm sure that you've gone through 4 years education, and I'm sure that you've learned a lot on campus. So go out there and make a difference. The only way is that you have to be proactive. Okay. And wherever you find, I tell people that wherever you find yourself, okay, sometimes you finish school and you don't even have a job. Why don't you, go to an organization, do a volunteer work. And then based on that, based on what you do, the employer might probably employ. So if you don't have job, don't sit down you see people like 2 years, they don't have work. But in the past, there are times that I didn't have job. I had to go and teach in a JSS school. So I was teaching catering and math. That was after university. And then through that was how I actually branched into HR, because my first degree was economics and geography. But because after university, I didn't have a job, I was at home, I decided to approach one of my pastors. So Anglican school, I decided to teach catering and math. And through that, I was able to get a job at Cape Coast Polytechnic. And there it was more about training. So this one, I think the JSS teaching actually helped me, because when I got there, I was even teaching both students and staff on how to use the college portal. And I think IMPA is using the iEnabler. That is how I started. And that is how I actually developed passion for training. And that has been the trend. So go out there, no matter, it doesn't matter what you are doing, do it well. Someone is watching you. And I'm sure that when you do that, you can add to your CV and get the job that you want to get in future. I wish you all the best. And I'm sure that you go there to lift GIMPA's name very high. Thank you so much.
Okay. Can you please take your screen off, and then we'll put the last bit of the whatever on it, and then we close.
Okay.
Okay. And we have to. Yes. Okay. I think we have to share this thing. Okay then. All right. Thank you very much. And we see you later. Thank you.